Hello and welcome to another episode of uh, the the Stop Doing That podcast, a podcast about terrible things that need to stop happening. My name is John. I'm the author of the What Happened Here series, a series about terrible things that have happened in history, and I'm here with my good friend Andrea.
Hello. That was a very defeated sigh you gave at the start of this recording. I hope everything is okay.
Everything's fine. Everything is fine. At least I think it is. It'll depend, I guess, on how this episode goes. So, I told as I said last week, we would be discussing a particular race car driver. Probably not one that a lot of Americans know about. Never raced in any American racing series. Um, there are a lot of questions that are debated among Formula One fans. Who has the best car? How bad is Lance Stroll? Which authoritarian regime should they race in next? And these questions aren't really much different from fan bases of other sports. But one question that often proves testy among NFL fans and NASCAR fans isn't nearly as controversial among Formula One fans. Who is the greatest driver of all time? Really, the question is less about who is the best driver, but rather if the question is worth asking. Every era of the sport is so different from the others that comparing drivers across them can be difficult. They focus on this because for F1 fans, the answer to the question, who is the best driver ever, is not up for debate. It's Ayrton Senna. Few challenge this, few even debate it. In the eyes of F1 heads, it's like questioning if humans need oxygen. Ayrton Senna is the greatest driver of all time, and anyone suggesting otherwise is either French or a delusional Schumacher or Hamilton fan. Ironic as both
Uh,
of the as
um, Mr. Spelling Bee man, can I get that used in a that word used in a sentence, please?
which word in particular?
I need that name used again. I don't know how to spell it.
Ayrton Senna. Ayrton, and then Senna. Senna.
Okay. Oh, oh no.
It's ironic as
Ah,
both Michael Schumacher and Lewis Hamilton, who are both 7-time world champions, have said that Senna is the best ever as well. But why is Senna the best ever? Why is everyone from 3-time world champion Niki Lauda to 2-time world champion Mika Hakkinen to the famous chef who screams at people, Gordon Ramsay, to F1 commentator Martin Brundle, even our favorite racist Jeremy Clarkson? Why are they all on the same page when it comes to this usually bitterly contested question? Moreover, how did the discourse surrounding this question become so unanimous? Even more broadly, why do people worship Ayrton Senna so much? That's what we're talking about today. Why people worship Ayrton Senna and why they need to stop. So, Ayrton Senna died before you and I were even born. But for whatever reason, he remains as relevant today as he was in 1993. Perhaps it's because of the
right.
cat. Go ahead.
I can kind of see why. I mean, I'm looking at some pictures of this guy. He's pretty. He's
He,
pretty. I'd kiss him.
you will.
Were he not Brazilian?
You say that now. I don't know if you will when I explain a few things about him.
Well, hey, I qualified that I would kiss him were it not for the fact that he is Brazilian.
I mean, it's not. Well, you'll see. Um, Perhaps it's because of the countless YouTube tribute videos. Perhaps it's because of the F1 fans who grew up in the 80s and 90s and Senna was who they remember best. Perhaps they're Brazilian, and Senna was one of the few things that gave them hope during times of hardship. Or could it be because of a film? In 2010, a documentary about the famed racing driver was produced by Asif Kapadia, a renowned British filmmaker known for his documentaries about celebrities, including singer Amy Winehouse, tennis star Roger Federer, alleged rapist Cristiano Ronaldo, and other alleged rapist Diego Maradona. The
Why
film
do I get the feeling that we're going to have episodes on all of these people?
Winehouse, possibly because of the whole singers dying at 27 thing, maybe. Federer, no, he seems pretty clean. Ronaldo and Maradona, probably. Uh, Anyways, this film was a huge hit. F1 fans loved it. Senna fans watched it thousands of times, and so did newcomers to the sport. Everyone who watched it came away thinking Ayrton Senna was racing's greatest badass and the best to ever hold a steering wheel. Don't believe me? Incel God and destroyer of society Joe Rogan once talked about it on his show and how he thought Senna was awesome. Now,
Well, I mean, I think that they're all wrong because, as we know, the true goddess of racing is Danica Patrick.
no, she would say it's the lizard people who actually control the world. Um,
next, next episode of Stop Doing That, Danica Patrick.
that will probably happen at some point, don't you worry. Um,
Oh no, I'm very much worried. I'm already worried. I'm scared.
You should be. You very much should be. Now, I won't pretend to be superior to Joe Rogan, at least in this regard. When I was 12, I found the movie on YouTube and watched it a bunch of times. I still watch clips of it here and there because the editing, the music, and the general atmosphere it sets are just so damn good. In terms of production, Senna is one of the best documentaries I've ever seen. It does an amazing job of portraying Senna as some kind of religious figure, a force of nature who changed the world just by driving his race car. It's because of things like this movie that Senna is seen as basically the godfather of Formula One. He is almost unanimously considered the greatest driver of all time, and all while being a humanitarian who donated millions to impoverished children in his home country of Brazil, a country he remained proud of despite the many problems they faced. But the Senna movie has a few problems. Some very, very major problems. So much so that the movie itself has become a problem. To properly explain why this movie is a misinformation machine bordering on cult indoctrination, I'm going to recount Senna's life based on the film's story, but also interject with facts from the true story. To say the least, they're a bit different. Not so much in what they claim, but what they leave out. In some cases, the film makes Senna actually look less impressive than he really was. In others, it makes him look better than he really was. But worst of all, it excuses or ignores some pretty terrible things that he did. So, like most Formula One drivers, Ayrton Senna da Silva was born in 1960 in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and he began his career in karting at the age of 4. Yeah, most of these guys, that's about when they start. They start at like 4 or 5 years old. I didn't even have the chance to start at 4. I didn't even get the chance to start like at 24, let alone 4 years old. The film starts with Senna speaking almost mournfully about the good old days when he raced in Europe for the very first time at the 1978 Karting World Championship. Quote, "It was pure driving, pure racing. There weren't any politics, no money involved either, like it was real racing." Senna was born to a wealthy family in an era where Brazil suffered from extraordinary economic hardship, so his family could easily support his racing ambitions, at least according to the film. Senna worked hard as a child to perfect his craft. He remarked that his first karting race in the rain was a, quote, disaster, a complete joke. I couldn't do any good. From there on, Senna went to the track any time it was wet so he could figure out how to be fast in damp conditions. He also took his schooling more seriously than most so that he wouldn't need to study at home, giving him more time in his go-karts. He dreamed of racing in Formula One from the start, and his ultimate dream was to win the sport's biggest prize, the World Drivers' Championship. His karting success in Brazil put him on the right path, and by the time he was a teen, he'd skyrocketed to being one of the sport's brightest young talents. Senna did well in the Karting World Championship, which was impressive for an 18-year-old. Well, at the time it was. Nowadays, at 18, he'd be looking to do his first F1 practice session. During all of this, Senna established his first rival, Terry Fullerton, a legend of the British karting golden age. Senna said Fullerton was his greatest competitor, even greater than his rivals in Formula One. But strangely, Terry had no ambitions beyond karting. He was happy to beat up on teenagers and amateurs working 9 to 5s for his entire career. Another rival of Ayrton's was of all people future NASCAR race winner Lake Speed, who defeated Ayrton in the 1978 Karting World Championship. My dad.
You mean to tell me that a man with the last name Speed, who is a racer, a speed racer, if you will, was
Yes,
good at racing?
indeed. My dad actually met
What will they come up with next?
My dad actually met Lake Speed once. He's not really a racing fan. My dad worked at a hotel near a NASCAR track, and one time he said he checked Lake Speed into the hotel. Probably while he was racing in NASCAR. And it probably wasn't actually that long after this happened, maybe a couple years or so. Senna came
Huh.
back to Europe in 1979 and took the runner-up spot in the Karting World Championship. He tried again in 1980 and finished second again. Unlike what the film claims, Ayrton's family tried to convince him to stop racing. It was dangerous and unrealistic as a career choice. Senna decided to hear them out and briefly attended Sao Paulo University, and quickly decided to say fuck that and move to England to continue racing. He spoke no English and more or less arrived with the clothes on his back. After putting up £10,000, Senna secured a ride in Formula Ford, which is one of the lower divisions in Formula racing. He took off quickly, winning 12 races in his first season of Formula Ford racing and two of Britain's biggest championships in that category. He then quit racing as he was grossed out by the business side of it, went back to Brazil, became a real estate developer, and is currently running for Congress. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next time. Okay.
Were it not for the fact that I've already in my Google Images search for this, that I already have had the ending spoiled for me, I would have bought the joke.
Yeah. Okay, cliche out of the way, let me explain what happens. Because this is something the film gets wrong. Senna's family was wealthy, but they didn't invest much beyond the bare minimum into his career. Ayrton needed sponsors to keep racing, and all the Brazilian companies would only consider backing Nelson Piquet, who would become a 3-time Formula One world champion. Between this and all the money Senna had to shell out just to even get a chance in racing, He became disillusioned with the sport from a business standpoint, which is why he quit. He returns to Brazil thinking his driving career was done, but then in February of 1982, as cars rolled off the grid without him in one of them, he knew he had to go back. He begged and pleaded with his father to lend him the money to continue racing, and his pop said, okay, fine, whatever. Again, the film doesn't mention this. They imply Senna's family was totally behind him when they really weren't. Senna returned to Europe to race in multiple Formula Ford 2000 championships. These cars are a step up from what he raced in 1981, with big wings that make the bigger tires grip the track harder, thus going faster. It costs £40,000 for a full season in these cars. But Senna got the team down to £10,000 because the team owner liked him enough in 1981 that he joked about Senna coming back to race for only £10,000 a year. Senna took him seriously because he always took things seriously. Senna also divorced his wife. He was apparently married during all of this, I guess. In the 19 races in that British F2000 season, Senna won 16 of them. In the European Championship, he won 6 out of the 9 races and won both titles very easily. This isn't highly unusual. Sometimes in these junior categories, one driver is just way better than everyone and will just win a bunch of times, but it is still impressive. During this time, F1 teams started reaching out, namely McLaren. But Senna opted to stay for another year in the junior categories, as the best McLaren could offer was a testing role. Senna wanted to race, not test, and race he would. So he went to British Formula 3 in 1983 and signed with the best team in the series, West Surrey Racing. He secured £120,000 to buy the ride. If you can't tell already, this sport is a fucking pyramid scheme. It was bad back then, and its magnitude's worse now. He probably needs to put up close to £1,000,000 today for a comparable ride. Can you see why a lot of race car drivers tend to be the children of very wealthy, very, very wealthy business owners?
Yeah, yeah, I can. It's I figured it was just like one of the prerequisites.
It more or less, it basically is. If your dad or is not a multi-billionaire, there's essentially no point in even bothering. You're just not going to get anywhere. In the first round of the British Formula 3 season, Senna qualified second, which was utterly unacceptable for him. He accused the pole position team of cheating, then turned his rage into a race win with the fastest lap. He then won the next race, and then the following 7 races. But then, Martin Brundle came into the picture. The now F1 commentator beat Senna at Silverstone, and that broke Ayrton. At Catwell Park, Senna crashed in qualifying trying to go faster when he already had pole position, and as a result he couldn't start the race and Brundle won. Brundle won again at Snetterton with another crash from Senna, and then a few weeks later at Oulton Park, while the two were racing side by side, Ayrton drove into a corner as hard as he could and smashed into Brundle, taking them both out of the race. Senna ended up on top of Brundle's car, which could have seriously injured the Briton, not that Senna cared. This was Senna's preferred driving style. He didn't try to go around you, he tried to kill you. He put the other driver in a position where they only had 2 choices: back off and let him go and keep racing, or crash. The idea was not just to remove the other driver's choice in the matter, but also to traumatize them. Next time Senna came up to them, they just pull over and let him go rather than risk getting killed. This way of
Having
passing. Go ahead.
having seen how this ends, that makes a lot more sense now.
Well, hold on to that because that actually does not have anything to do with what happens to him. Um,
Really?
really, no. Does not have anything. It's not as a result of anything like that. But, anyways, this way of passing people is something Senna is legendary for, and I can't deny its effectiveness. Although I personally think it's incredibly stupid, dangerous, and disrespectful to your fellow opponents. You want to get yourself killed? Fine, none of my business. But getting others killed because you can't pass someone like a normal racing driver is something else entirely. There's a fine line between being aggressive and being a dickhead, and this goes firmly into dickhead territory. If it's the last lap and you're running in second place, then maybe I could see myself doing this. You have to do what you have to do to win the race. But Senna did this basically any chance he had, and that is just ridiculous. Anyways, as Giga Chad Brundle kept winning, Senna did the mature thing of accusing the Brits of cheating, something he had no evidence of. And going into the final round of the season, Senna had dropped 1 point behind Brundle. However, the point system required drivers to drop their best three results. As such, Martin had to win pole position, set the fastest lap in the race, and win it in order to win the championship. Martin did none of these things, while Senna did them all and won the championship. In 1983, Senna also tested for numerous Formula One teams. In a test with Williams, he went 1.5 seconds faster than that year's Formula 2 champion and drove so viciously that onlookers thought he would get himself killed. In a test with McLaren, he supposedly set the fastest lap with a blown engine, as in the engine died. I just don't believe this at all. You can't drive the car without an engine. That's not how it works. If the car's engine stops working, it just simply stops moving. Did he
Yeah,
power the.
I was going to say I don't think there's enough. I don't think you can conserve enough energy in the car to feasibly do that.
Like, did he power the car with his mind? Did he leave his body and push it around in the aether? Also,
Well, I mean, he is Brazilian. They're known for doing that.
none of this is mentioned in the film. They make no mention of Senna's junior career except for his karting stuff a little bit. They touch on that a tiny bit. In the next year, Senna secured his first ride in Formula One racing. The film cuts to the 1984 Monaco Grand Prix, which is Formula One's showcase race. The weather was abysmal, pouring rain throughout the morning and afternoon. It was practically impossible to drive around in a normal car, let alone a race car. Yet the race went ahead. Senna, then in his rookie season, would be driving for the Tolman team in an odd looking car that also wasn't very good. For those who aren't Formula One fans, the cars are not the same throughout the field. They're built mostly from scratch by the teams, and whether it be from a lack of funds or the varying expertise of the engineers or both, most of the cars you see line up on the grid have no chance of winning. They're usually seconds slower than the cars at the front. The best car in 1984 was the McLaren, driven by France's Alain Prost and Austria's Niki Lauda. They would lap the Tolman multiple times in an average race, but because of the weather this day, average was about the last word that could describe this race in the Principality. After 5 laps, Senna reached 8th place and kept climbing, as even the best drivers struggled in the extra slick conditions. Senna picked them off one by one as the race went on. Rain often allows drivers in slower cars to show their true skills, as the conditions require one to be extra careful with the car so as to not turn it into scrap metal. Senna, widely considered the best ever in the wet, proved this by eventually blasting by Niki Lauda, who would become the world champion later that year. Now in second place, Senna went after Alain Prost. He was gaining on the Frenchman by upwards of 3 seconds a lap. That in a middling car, even in rainy conditions, is utterly insane. If the race goes on just a few more laps, Ayrton will pass Prost and will probably win the Monaco Grand Prix, one of the biggest races in the world, in just his 6th start in Formula One, and in a car that has no rights to be competing for wins. It should also be
I am currently looking at the car, and I have to say, I like it. I like it. It's got class.
does it have 2 wings on it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it is an odd looking car, but I also do like it. I do agree with you. Um, it should also be noted that passing at Monaco is incredibly difficult due to how tight the circuit is, and the corners are set up in such a way that outbraking someone is difficult. Yet Senna passed basically everyone in front of him like they were standing still. If he got by Prost, the Frenchman would have no chance of getting back by him. The only driver who might have been able to beat him was Stefan Beloff, another young driver who was doing pretty much the same exact thing. He was in a normally much slower car, but was tearing through the field thanks to his skill in the wet. This is largely forgotten due to Senna's performance. So, Prost begged the officials each time he went by to stop the race, and eventually they obliged, as the weather kept getting worse. On lap 31 of 77, the red flag and checkered flag were displayed, and Prost decided to slow down and creep up to them. But then, Senna shot right past him and crossed the line first. He just won the race. Or not. Prost was awarded the win as he was ahead when the race was called. Senna was obviously disappointed by this, but given he just took second place in a race where he should have had no chance of winning, he could only be too upset. Later in the year, Senna faced another challenge, his health. He developed Bell's palsy, which caused paralysis on one side of his face and made it difficult to close one of his eyes. He was given medication by Dr. Sid Watkins, F1's medical director, which kept his career going. The two later became close friends. Also in 1984, Senna won an exhibition race at the Nürburgring, the Grand Prix circuit, not the big one that we all know and love. This is a smaller circuit they also have. The race was conducted with 20 identical Mercedes 190E cars, and there were a lot of big names in this race. There was Alain Prost, former world champions Alan Jones, Denny Hulme, John Surtees, Sterling Moss, Phil Hill, James Hunt, Jack Brabham, Niki Lauda, K.K. Rosberg, and Jody Scheckter, as well as touring car legend Klaus Ludwig. That said,
I'm gonna take you at your word that these are people who exist
they do exist,
because you've
yes.
just said a bunch of names at me. I
Yeah,
don't know any of these people.
I'm sorry, yes. They're all, they were all
Other than the
very,
ones that you previously mentioned in this episode.
yeah. Just note, they're all very good race car drivers. That said, a lot of these drivers were pretty old when this race happened. And Senna beat them all, which I don't think is as impressive as it seems because they were old, but it's still interesting. And it's something I'd like to see happen again someday. I'd like to see a race like this. For 1985, Senna left the Tolman team on not entirely amicable terms for Lotus, who almost didn't sign him due to his Bell's palsy scare. Lotus had a rich history in the sport, employing legends like Jim Clark and Graham Hill. While their best days were behind them, the team was still reasonably competitive, much more so than Tolman. Senna made his big chance count, and at the Portuguese Grand Prix, he took his first Formula One victory, lapping all but one car in, of course, damp conditions. Also around this
Our,
point,
our boy just lives in a swamp, apparently.
apparently so, also around this point, Senna began dating Adriane Yamin, the daughter of a prominent Brazilian businessman. Senna was
Do
25.
I want to look up what the
I'm about to tell you.
what the age gap on that
I'm
is?
about to tell you what it was.
Oh no!
Senna
Oh no!
Senna was 25, Yamin was 15.
Oh!
And no,
Oh!
and no, I don't care what the Brazilian law says, nor do I care whether it was normal at this time, nor do I care what Adrienne herself thinks of Ayrton. That is fucking disgusting. Yamin
Oh! That's just gross.
Yamin is not talked about in the movie. I wonder why that is. Yeah.
They're calling him Mr. Alleged Sex Crimes.
Yep. Yeah. I really wonder why they didn't talk about her. Oh my god. But by this point in which Senna is doing this, he had become the Prince Charming of Formula One, as well as his best.
As long as he's not becoming the Prince Andrew of
Yeah,
Formula One, we'll be fine.
I guess so. He was also its best young talent. He was known for pushing the car.
Not as young as his wife. Kill me.
uh, he was known for driving the car much more aggressively than others could. He would brake later and use less brake. He would use more throttle. He would turn the car harder into the corner. He would do it to such a degree that it seemed impossible for him to not crash, yet he wouldn't. It was like ballet at 200 miles per hour, and he was doing it better than anyone. He also had a knack for qualifying, being so much faster than anyone over a single lap that most opted to just jump out of the way when they saw him coming, not wanting to ruin the lap the world was waiting for. It caught the attention of Ron Dennis, McLaren's team principal, who was thinking about who would be a good teammate for Alain Prost. After Niki Lauda's retirement, Prost won the World Championship twice in a row for McLaren in 1985 and 1986. Prost was the polar opposite of Ayrton. He didn't push the car as hard, nor did he take risks. If he was running in second place and knew it would give him the lead in the World Championship, he'd hold second place and not risk trying to crash in an attempt to win the race. He was exceptionally crisp. He had an exceptionally crisp, smooth driving style, which was boring to spectators, but there's no denying that it worked. There's a reason he was called the Professor. In 1988, McLaren signed Ayrton to be Prost's teammate. Senna had clawed his way to the sport's best team, and while he knew it wouldn't be easy, this was the place to be if he wanted to win the World Championship. He and Prost got on well at first, joking around like brothers in arms. Little did anyone know that these two would form one of the most intense rivalries in sports history. Because while teammates, they're still competitors above all else. Quote from Alan: "He never wanted to beat me. He wanted to humiliate me." As the season went on, the relationship between Senna and Prost deteriorated. Prost said that the first major issue they had was at the Estoril circuit in Portugal, in which Prost was trying to pass Ayrton, and Ayrton allegedly swerved at Prost and nearly smashed him into the pit wall. Prost went on to win the race, but was understandably a bit freaked out by this. This was not mentioned in the film. It became obvious that the McLaren was the best car, and Senna and Prost were the best drivers. The McLaren MP44 became one of the most iconic cars in Formula One history, in part because of its drivers. I'm actually going to send a few pictures of that car in the episode chat, just so you can get a look at that.
Ooh. Oh, it's brought to you by our favorite brand of smokable tobacco,
Indeed it
Marlboro.
is. Indeed it is.
Sponsors of this episode.
Yes, sponsored by Marlboro. We will give you cancer.
This episode is not actually sponsored by Marlboro. Neither of us smoke.
Of course, yeah. Anyways, it became iconic because of the drivers and also because it kept winning races. McLaren won all but one race in 1988. This also made Honda, who supplied the engines for McLaren, one of the most famous engine manufacturers in racing. Ayrton became extremely popular in Japan because of his relationship with Honda. In qualifying for that year's Monaco Grand Prix, something strange happens. Ayrton says that in qualifying, he effectively lost consciousness. He became one with the car. He became the car. He said that he could look down at himself driving it and every single thing the car was doing. It sounds paranormal, almost like astral projection. We don't know if Senna
Oh,
was...
I was going to say he'd be great friends with Danica Patrick.
Ah, yes, that's what the lizard people are doing. They're looking down at her car and telling her how to drive it. Anyways, we don't know if Senna was exaggerating, but he seems to have really believed this happens. But the film leaves out one...
Okay.
But the film...
I
Here's the thing, though. The film leaves out one critical detail. One that makes me think something really did happen to Senna on that day in the Principality, and that's the lap time. When he crossed the line, Senna's qualifying time was inconceivable. He went to first place, Prost in second place, no surprise. But Senna went 1.5 seconds faster than Prost. One and a half.
maybe he's like the FEMA administrator who swears he can teleport
Yeah, maybe a bit like
and not
that.
that he has a drinking problem.
Yeah. Oh, God. But yeah, 1.5 seconds faster than a multiple time world champion in the same car. For those unaware, that gap is like impossibly large. Nothing like this has happened since. Beating second place by half a second is considered impressive, especially if it's your world champion teammate. This was 3 times that. It's considered one of the greatest driving achievements in history and the most legendary lap anyone has ever turned in a race car. Nothing, and I mean nothing, can compare to what Senna did in this qualifying session. Why the film left this out, I have no idea. This could really drive the point home that Senna was really able to do extraordinary things with a race car. As critical as I am of him, this is without question the best lap anyone has ever turned in a car, at least in the last 50 years or so. It's one of those things someone does in sports that is legitimately unfathomable. We have no footage of this lap, which might be why it was left out, but to water it down to just Senna sounding like he had some kind of mental health episode in the car is cinematic malpractice. Why not at least talk about both? I don't know. Anyways, in the race itself, Senna proceeded to dominate and was leading by a huge margin with less than 10 laps to go. His team told him to back off and try and save the car, and that's when disaster struck. Backing off caused Senna to break his rhythm, forcing him into a mistake that led to the nose of his McLaren finding the Monaco barrier and smashing into it, thus causing him to throw away an easy victory at the sport's biggest race. Alain Prost won the Monaco Grand Prix and took the lead in the World Championship. The incident left Senna devastated. He walked back to his apartment, only blocks from the track itself, and secluded himself. On that day, he learned not to back down, not even as he destroyed his competition. In order to win, he could not just beat everyone. He had to annihilate them, especially Alain Prost. Ayrton won 6 of the next 8 races, putting him in position to win the championship heading into the second-to-last race at Suzuka, which is the circuit for the Japanese Grand Prix. This was the biggest race of Senna's life. If he won the race, he would be champion of the world. Nothing Prost could do in the season finale in Australia would be enough. His dearest wish would come true. And he was starting on pole position, and then proceeded to stall as the lights went out, dropping him to 16th place. Unfazed, Senna put his head down and started picking off cars one after another. Eventually, it started raining, and Senna rapidly climbed up the field like a ladder. Eventually, he'd reach the top by passing Alain Prost. Going from 16th to a race win is rare even today, even with a car as good as what Senna had. And as he drove around the Suzuka circuit one last time, he felt the weight of the world lift from his shoulders. A religious man, he felt he could see and feel God. Ayrton Senna da Silva had become Brazil's 3rd Formula One world champion. Although, he probably shouldn't have. Prost actually scored more points than Senna, but the system at the time only counted a driver's best 11 finishes. If they counted all of the races, Prost would have scored 9 more points than Senna, a full race's worth. Immediately, Senna became a national hero. Brazil had little else, with the economy in ruins, crime rampant, and the government not interested in fixing it. But even with that, Senna always remained proud of where he came from. He waved the Brazilian flag with each win. Every off-season, he came home to Brazil to be with his friends and family. In 1989, Senna's career took a dark turn. Now a world champion, he and Alain Prost's rivalry hit a new level. Senna often won pole position, but Prost would win the races, in part because Senna's car had a tendency to break down. And as for the relationship between the two McLaren drivers, Prost says it completely fell apart at the Imola circuits in Italy. The two had an agreement to not fight each other in the first corner as to not risk wiping both McLarens out of the race. On the start, this agreement was respected, but the race was halted due to a crash and had to be restarted. This time, Senna fought Prost, claiming that since it was a restart, the agreement no longer applied. Honestly, I'm kind of on Senna's side with this one. You know, it's not a race start anymore. You do what you gotta do. But Prost,
Yeah, yeah. That's kind of like failing to execute. Like executing and then reviving someone on death row. They've kind of already served their sentence.
yeah. Anyways, after this, Prost said he would only work with Senna on the technical aspects of the car and nothing else. Both drivers felt they were at war. Prost believed that McLaren favored Senna, while Senna believed that the officials favored Prost. Prost was good friends with Jean-Marie Balestri, the head of FISA, now known as the FIA, which is the governing body behind Formula One. Balestri, like Prost, was French, which of course means he is untrustworthy. Mr. Balestri will come up again whenever we do a Group B episode, by the way. Also, there is some evidence that McLaren did favor Senna, or at least Honda did. Prost never had much of a relationship with the engine manufacturer, while Senna worked closely with them. Prost alleged that while testing in France in 1988, he asked for some changes to the engine which he felt would suit his driving style, and he found that the changes worked. When he came to the next race, that engine was not there. But he did have that engine the next time they went to France, and with it he won pole position. Eventually, Prost went to Honda's chairman, a Mr. Kawamoto, and he allegedly told Prost more or less that they did favor Senna because, quote, he was more the samurai, and I, Prost, was more the computer. Could this also be why Senna was so much faster in that Monaco qualifying session in 1988? Anyways, the battle for the world title came down to the Japanese Grand Prix once again. Prost had built up enough of a points lead that Senna had to win at Suzuka to have any mathematical chance at the title in Australia. Prost knew for certain that if Senna didn't finish the race, he would be champion of the world for a third time. Of course, they made up the front row with Senna on pole position, but Prost got the jump on the start and drove away from his teammates. So Senna spent the rest of the race trying to track Prost down. Each time they flashed by the start-finish, the gap between the two McLarens got narrower. With 8 laps to go, Senna went for it all. From multiple car lengths behind, Senna lunged into the extra-tight Casio chicane at Prost, and Prost turned into the corner early. In a shocking moment, their wheels banged against each other, knocking out Prost's suspension and breaking Senna's front wing, causing them to come to a stop. Prost hopped out of the car while Senna told the track marshals to give him a push start so he could keep going. He drove through the escape road inside the chicane, which is there in case someone misses it, and kept going. He charged to the pit area to get his front wing replaced, then set after the new leader, Alessandro Nannini. He had 5 laps to run down and pass him, and so Senna drove his guts out. As that's happening, Prost ran to the steward's office. With 3 laps to go, in the same corner where he came together with Prost, Senna dived after Nannini from way behind and slipped past him. Senna came around to win the Japanese Grand Prix, keeping his championship hopes alive. Or so it seemed. As the minutes went by, no one went out onto the podium. It was clear that something was going on. Just as we are going on to the conversation corner.
Jesus Christ. Okay, I didn't think we were actually going to do it for this episode.
Yeah, this is a longer one.
You will, listener. There's a note in the episode Discord forum that just says corner.
Yeah, sorry about that.
All
Anyways,
good. So before this episode, I told you that you would have an option for this for today's news items. Would you like science bullshit or would you like politics bullshit?
given the current state of affairs, I think I'll go for science bullshit.
All right, we're talking cocaine salmon.
Fantastic. That's what I love to see.
So, um, a little while back, a research team in Sweden decided to see what would happen if you introduce fish to cocaine.
I imagine not good things.
Yeah, yeah. So they introduced a captive bred population of juvenile Arctic Atlantic salmon to a an inland lake in Sweden. In the lab, these fish had been introduced to a controlled amount of cocaine.
Really?
What? Yes. What they found was that, in fact, like in humans, introducing fish to cocaine is not a good idea.
I'm shocked. I'm truly shocked.
The cocaine caused the fish to move more rapidly, to burn through more of their caloric intake, and to thus be less capable of defending themselves in the lake.
So they just acted like someone on cocaine.
Yeah, exactly.
Remarkable
Exactly.
study.
It turns out the effects of cocaine on fish is the exact same as the effects of cocaine on people.
Remarkable study there.
They noted that the fish were able to move about 12 kilometers further than those that had not been exposed to cocaine. Um, now you may be wondering why the hell were the Swedes introducing fish to cocaine? Is it just that they think it's cool? Well, no. Um, in our modern society, there's a lot of crap that's getting flushed into the sewage systems. Some of this crap is cocaine, and so it is getting into wildlife.
It
And
is
we need to
true.
know what happens when we expose wildlife to our dangerous pollution, like cocaine.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I can see the logic here then, if that is the case.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not anywhere near as cool and is almost exactly as depressing as Cocaine Bear.
Yeah. So, I was watching before this, I was watching a video from a good old Moist Critical on YouTube. He was talking.
Do I want to know what the impetus behind this was?
Well, here's what it was. Back in January, there was a video. A man got on a police chase. What sort of vehicle do you think he used for this police chase?
Well, if generally asking that question, you're binding for you're aiming for a an unconventional answer. So I'm going bicycle.
Wrong. Excavator.
Oh shit, man!
Which,
Hell yeah!
yeah, he was, and apparently this is not the first time somebody has done this. In the video, this man just drives around in his little excavator, evading the police, who are able to catch up with him by briskly jogging. They call his family in there to get him to stop. It doesn't seem to work very well, but I guess somehow they apprehended the man. But just like, why would you use an excavator of all things?
I mean, to be fair, it's fairly hard for someone to attempt to like mount and you know remove one from the vehicle
If it
if it's an excavator.
if it was a big excavator, I think I could understand the logic because you at least have that giant shovel that you can use as a weapon. But this is not one of those. This is one of those small little ones that when I say small, they're still, you know, big.
Yeah,
Just
look, it looks like it's maybe like a 4 or 5 ton one.
yeah, certainly big enough to
I mean,
crush.
honestly, I think that those little ones are scarier than the big ones. The big ones you can see coming. They have all that mass that it has to move. Those little ones are quick.
They can be, and certainly if I had lots of money, I would buy one of those little excavators and just like dig little holes and just
Oh
have
boy, well
fun.
do I have the as it has been advertised to me, do I have the sponsor for you? Timu. They keep telling me that they're selling fucking excavators.
Are they actually? Are they
I'm not going
actually?
to find out.
Yeah. So I think with that, we will get back on the throttle and quickly exit the conversation corner and back into our story. So it turned out Prost was protesting not the crash, but Senna's method of rejoining the race. Prost claimed it was illegal for Senna to use the escape road in the chicane, and FISA agreed, and Senna was disqualified. The championship was over. When Prost was interviewed, he looked sullen, expressing that it was, quote, impossible to race with Ayrton. A furious Ron Dennis showed footage of drivers doing the same thing Ayrton did without penalty, that being driving through the escape road. Even though one of his drivers still won the championship he believed that Senna had been screwed. Especially when footage of the crash emerged, which showed Prost turning into the corner much earlier than normal. Accusations of Prost intentionally causing the crash were widespread and continue today, which Prost adamantly denies. Personally, I don't think Prost did it on purpose so much as I think he turned Senna's tactics against him. Senna was doing was called a dive bomb, where you're trying to pass someone into a tight corner from way, way behind. It is a legitimate way to pass someone, but it is very risky and can easily cause a crash. Senna was very much doing the whole you lift or we both crash kind of thing. And I think Prost was basically just doing the same thing. He saw Senna trying to make a hyper aggressive move and decided he wasn't going to play that game. He didn't wreck Senna so much as he made no attempts to avoid hitting him. And Prost more or less said this was what happens. He said later in an article that he felt no obligation to give Senna room, especially given it was Prost's corner. And yes, Senna fans, it was Prost's corner. He was clearly coming to the apex first. That makes it his corner. End of conversation. In addition to his disqualification, Senna's racing license was suspended for 6 months and he received a $100,000 fine. Jean-Marie Balestri blasted Senna in the press, blaming him entirely for the crash and that his penalty would serve as an example to all racing drivers on how not to behave. That, I will say, is ridiculous. Nothing about this warranted a disqualification from the race, nor a suspension of Senna's license. And I do think Senna and Dennis have a point when it comes to the escape road. If you can't use it, why is it there? Is it for decoration? I'd say the fact that he was forced to stop for 30 seconds and had to replace his front wing was more than enough punishment for what he did. And admittedly, it was a very risky, bordering on stupid move, but it's for the World Championship. Any driver worth their salt is going to do what they must in order to win. Senna obviously was outraged by all of this. He nearly quit Formula One on the spot, but Ron Dennis convinced him to come back, especially since he wouldn't need to deal with Prost anymore. He left McLaren to join Ferrari in 1990. Throughout 1990, the two attacked each other in the media. Senna accused Prost of weaponizing the politics of the sport against him, while Prost accused Senna of being a reckless driver. The film displays the consequences of racing by showing the crumpled body of Martin Donnelly, who suffered a horrific accident in Spain. While Donnelly survived and would later have his crash used in the recent F1 movie and have it attributed to its character Sonny Hayes, it served as a wake-up call, including to Senna, who described being deeply disturbed by the incident. But like all drivers, he put those feelings aside and drove his guts out for the rest of the season, winning his way to being in position to score a second world championship when Suzuka rolled around. It was the opposite of 1989. Prost had to win the race to keep the championship going to Australia, meaning if Prost didn't finish, Senna would win the title no matter what. But Senna had a problem. On pole position as usual, he felt the starting spot for the pole sitter should be on the leftmost side of the grid rather than the right side, as it had been in years past, he says. The right side had more debris on the track, limiting grip to the pole sitter. Being on pole position would actually be a disadvantage to Senna and an advantage to Prost, who started second, of course. The film implies that pole position had been moved suddenly when Senna won it. Put a pin in that. When the FISA refused to move pole position back to the outside, Senna was just about the angriest man in the world. It had already been tense going in as Senna walked out of the drivers' meeting when the matter of the Casio chicanes runoff came up. And now things were just about as tense as the Cold War. During an interview, Senna took it personally. Quote, "That decision was influenced by Balestri. I know that. We know that. I was fucked many times by the system. I told myself, today there's no way. Today has to be my way. I don't care what happens. It has to be my way." When the lights went out, Senna decided to do something different. Prost got the jump as expected and was ahead going into turn 1, a faster corner on the racetrack. Senna had the inside and never lifted. He drove into Prost's rear wing at full throttle, sending them both spinning around. For the second year in a row, a crash between Senna and Prost had decided the World Championship. With that, Senna won his second world title as neither of them could continue going in the race. Obviously, this was a controversial affair, but given the fact that it was so painfully obvious that Senna crashed Prost on purpose. Ron Dennis claimed it looked like Senna was ashamed of himself, yet he denied any wrongdoing, and the FISA didn't penalize him. Years later, Senna was asked about the incident by Formula One legend turned broadcaster Jackie Stewart, who accused Senna of doing this on purpose. Senna denied any responsibility, and then decided to ruin racing forever with one quote. "By being a racing driver, you are under risk all the time. And by being a racing driver means you are racing with other people. And if you no longer go for a gap that exists, you're no longer a racing driver." Now you see, the way the film handles this is interesting. The film and Ron Dennis in the film implied that pole position had always been on the left-hand side of the track at Suzuka, and FISA moved it to the right side after Ayrton took pole for the Japanese Grand Prix, as if to tip the scales in Prost's favor. Well, we have footage of the start of the prior two Japanese Grand Prix in this movie, so let's rewind. Oh, that's the right side of the grid Ayrton is on. And who was on pole position for these races? Yes, Ayrton. So this movie is lying to us, and we can prove it. We can prove that it's lying by rewinding to earlier in the film. How the fuck do you let this happen? I mean, this is basic fact checking. A 13-year-old could figure this out. I say that having watched this movie at 13 and believed every word of it uncritically. When the pundits, witnesses, and fans see the footage of Senna wrecking Prost, they always speak of it as either a glorious act of justifiable revenge or a display of just how driven Senna was. He was willing to do whatever it took to win, no matter if it was right or wrong. He was a knight on wheels. He saw racing as war with cars. His will to win.
Wait, hang on a minute. Um, is war with cars not just war?
I suppose, yeah, in some ways. But like his will to win went beyond anyone else, and he wouldn't let anyone get in his way. And if they did, they'd face the consequences. It might be ugly, but this act is what made Senna truly the greatest of all time. Meanwhile, I look at it and see a man-child who's mad that the FISA didn't change their rules on a whim to benefit him, and so he decided that throwing the most dangerous temper tantrum in sports history was the best way to deal with it. Prost later said that he wanted to punch Senna, but was so disgusted by him that he couldn't even bring himself to face the Brazilian. I don't want to condone violence, but if you're going to pile drive someone at 140 miles per hour in what is effectively a bomb on wheels, you shouldn't complain if you get a fist in your mouth. The fact that Senna faced no consequences for this also makes it hard to believe the claims that Balestri and the FISA were working on Prost's behalf. This was literally the perfect opportunity to hit Senna hard, yet they chose to do nothing. The media mostly stood with Senna, as did Honda, according to Prost. It infuriated him so much that he considered retirement. The crash also set a terrible example for racing drivers around the world. Senna's flimsy justification for this, if you no longer go for a gap, you're no longer a racing driver, is arguably part of the reason why racing drivers are so much more crash prone these days. Senna's tactic of putting drivers in a position where they either lift or both of them crash is pretty much the standard today in F1 and in other racing series. Every driver wants to be Senna, from Formula 3 drivers to dentists in GT3 cars to plumbers racing ship boxes at their local short track. They all do this, and it all sucks. Senna's move on Prost is also not the last time that something like this has happened. 4 years later, Michael Schumacher intentionally took out championship rival Damon Hill in the final race, faced no penalty, and won the world championship because of it. 3 years after that, Schumacher tried to do the exact same thing to Jacques Villeneuve, but fucked it up and took himself out, allowing Villeneuve to get away and win the world championship. Only this time did the FIA decide to do something, and that something was disqualifying Schumacher from the entire championship. For unknown reasons, this sort of thing doesn't happen much anymore. Yet, While Senna is lionized for taking out Prost, Schumacher is demonized even today for this. There's no talk about how badly he wanted to win and how he would do anything to get the job done. He's just seen as a bad loser who did a stupid thing in a petulant attempt to not lose, and rightfully so. But why is what Schumacher did bad, but not what Senna did? In fact, what Senna did was far more dangerous. Schumacher's incidents happened late in the race in very slow corners, and the same went for the incident with Prost in 1989. Senna took Prost out in a much faster corner in the opening seconds of the race, i.e., when the cars are filled with fuel that can burn people to death. Either way, the rivalry between Prost and Senna pushed the sport to new heights. It broke into the nightly news more than ever before, all about these two racing drivers and their war for supremacy in Formula One. Senna became one of the most famous athletes on Earth, and in Brazil, he at this point achieved a godlike status. As he gave them something to be proud of, something to believe in. And Ayrton genuinely cared about these problems, it seems. He donated millions of his own dollars to charities, hospitals, and organizations of all kinds. He thought about starting a charity of his own, specifically to help children growing up in the most impoverished, crime-stricken areas of Brazil. But he also wanted to help through his racing. His racing provided at least a distraction, if a temporary one, from everything else that was going on. It united a nation so deeply divided. Everyone, rich and poor, loved Senna. Nothing proved that more than the 1991 Brazilian Grand Prix. This is probably the best scene in the whole movie. Despite winning 2 World Championships and challenging the greats for the most wins and pole positions in F1 history, Senna had never won his home race. At the Interlagos circuit in Sao Paulo, he intended to change that. He dominated from the start and led with less than a dozen laps to go. It started to rain, his favorite thing. But to the horror of everyone, his gearbox locked up. He only had 6th gear, meaning he'd struggle mightily to slow down going into the corners and to gain speed coming out of them. But Senna wouldn't be denied. He put his head down and drove as hard as he possibly could to make up for any lost time. He pushed the car so hard that his body started to give out. But on this day in Brazil, he would not be denied. He crossed the finish line and was screaming on the radio in joy, relief, and pain. He snatched the Brazilian flag out of a marshal's hand as the crowd chanted his name. He then passed out and needed to be driven back to the pits by the track marshals. At the podium, he pushed aside the incredible pain to properly lift the trophy and to celebrate the biggest win of his life. Senna's 1991 season was arguably his best. He took 7 wins, won pole position almost every single time, and won a 3rd world title. That said, the film also shows a serious crash that Senna had at the 1991 Mexican Grand Prix when he bounced off a tire wall and it flipped his car over. While he was unhurt, it shook him. It seemed as though he never really expected he could get hurt in one of these cars. But Professor Sid Watkins said that Senna was able to put it into the back of his head. That's what racing drivers have to do. Outside of the car, they can be as jumpy and fearful as they like, but once the helmet goes on and the engine rumbles to life, they have to put it aside and do whatever is necessary to win, no matter how dangerous. If they can't do that, they need to get out of the car. And that is where we will end part 1 of the Ayrton Senna story. Andrea, how are you feeling about this individual?
Well, I don't really know what I was expecting, but this is yeah, basically exactly what I was expecting. I mean, he's a prick,
Oh, he is. Oh,
but
he
then again, so are like half of the people in motorsports.
and basically all professional athletes, to be honest. I mean, you sort of have to be nuts in order to succeed at that level. It's just kind of not that it justifies it. Nothing justifies some of the
Yeah,
stuff he did, but you do have to be a bit insane to get to this
yeah, you do.
level. So, we will join you for part 2 of the Ayrton Senna story relatively soon. Andrea, do you have any potential hints you want to give us as to what might be going on in your next episode, or do you want to save that?
Well, I don't know if it gets picked up by my mic, but you can hear me currently like typing out some of the next parts of the next episode. Um,
Really?
yeah, yeah. I probably should have had it done slightly sooner, but I had most of this written like a month ago.
That's understandable. Yeah, I mean, I haven't even started writing uh, the episode I will do after part 2 of the
Oh yeah,
Ayrton
yeah.
Senna
You've
story.
been busy writing this one,
Yeah, but actually, kind
and
of
the
like
longer we dally here, the less time we have for the next one.
that is indeed true. Yes. So I've been John,
And I'm Andrea.
and we'll see you next time on Stop Doing That.